Okay, we've got the core material already coated with a hot coat. That hot coat's going to do a couple things. It's going to fill pores in the foam, so it doesn't try to pull resin out of our fabric going down on the foam. And it acts as a tacky coat to hold Innegra fabric down. In this case, I'm going to use a veil surface again against the core first. But because I'm using a vinyl ester resin, not an epoxy resin, which we'll do next, I've chosen to use a continuous filament veil opposed to a woven veil like this one. The reason for that is because this veil will actually disappear and give you better aesthetics with the vinyl ester. Whereas if you use this type of veil with epoxies, the epoxy won't break down the binder and it won't wet out properly. So we'll start with that one first, and it will absolutely disappear here in just a second.
Do you have to use a veil when using Innegra? Can you put Innegra right on the foam?
I feel very strongly that we need to have a very light veil against the foam to get a good encapsulation of the Innegra and to prevent the foam from drawing the resin out of the laminate that you put down because of the hydrophobic nature of the Innegra. So, as you can see, sounds very nice. This time we're going to put an IN36A or a PC1
120 GSM Innegra.
120 GSM. So this one would go down next. And you can see that we've got a lot of resin that's already pushed up through the bottom. Note that it stayed the same color and it didn't go transparent. So what we're going to do is squeegee this out again. This is doing a couple of things. This is pushing resin down into the core, making sure that the pores of the core are completely filled with resin so that it cannot pull additional resin out or away from the Innegra. Now we're going to apply another ply of a 2x2 twill Innegra, which would be the top surface of your surfboard or your paddleboard. Lightly tack this down. Now Innegra's got enough body that if you're careful, you can control the actual fiber alignment. So if you're trying to get a particular type of pattern on the top of your board, Innegra will allow you to do that. A lot of times glass, carbon, aramids are so soft and supple that they're very difficult to control without putting a backer on it or a stabilizing material on the back. Innegra does give you an advantage in that regard. Again, what we're going to do is going to wet it out and then squeegee her down. Any questions there, Kevin? Pretty straightforward, huh?
Yeah. You just call this one wet out, but you call that one wet out when you left an excessive level on the top there.
That's a flood coat.
Okay.
And that's typically what you'll see on stand-up paddleboards or surfboards, where they'll come back and they'll flood coat the top. And what that does is it tends to fill in all the little micro voids in the laminate and gives them a little nicer surface for which to abrade. Now in this case, we don't want to press too hard because we're not trying to push the resin through the Innegra into the core. We've already done that. What we're trying to do is make sure that we have a good bond between the Innegra and the veil that we put down against the core. So it's okay to have a little extra resin on this particular part. And then last is we'll go on with another veil.
So the same veil
It's
type
the
that you had on the bottom?
The same type, yes.
Same type.
When you do your calculations,
Yeah.
you did it by the volume.
Yeah.
not by the weight. Can you explain that?
Yeah, I can try to explain that in a simple form. For our customers, we are actually building a laminate builder calculator, which will be on our site soon. But what we have to do is take into consideration the thickness of the fabric to determine how much resin it will take in order to fill that from the bottom to the top. So it's going to be a very different number than it is on glass or aramid or carbon, because it's the fibers of the other materials are going to tend to soak material, whereas Innegra will not soak. So I don't know how to tell you how to calculate it right now without my calculator.
But they definitely need to do by volume, not by weight.
They need to do it by volume, not by weight, yes.
So is there a significant difference between, let's just say, a 6-ounce glass and a 6-ounce Innegra,
Absolutely.
thickness-wise?
Yes, there is. There's differences in how the toes will actually spread, which affect how much resin is taken in. And there's differences in how they compact and consolidate and nest with one another. For everybody who's doing stand-up paddle boards or surfboards, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put a little excess resin on the top of this and show you a little trick I've used for years when I have to go back and post coat wet layups like this. So what I'll typically do is I'll get a bag film. Okay. I'll take a piece of bag film and I'll actually put it down on my laminate. And you can see right away the resin kind of pooling under there. And since we're doing an outside layup, particularly like on a surfboard or a stand-up paddleboard, we don't have a mold surface to give us that really smooth resin surface that we need to minimize the amount of work that we have to do. So I like to use bag film where possible, you know, little. All right, so what I'll do now is I'll lightly squeegee across the top of the bag, push air out. You can use soapy water or even resin on the top of your bag as a lubricant. And you can push your air right out. Now when we're done, we can actually peel this right off, and the surface that you're going to have against your laminate is going to be as smooth as the bag surface itself. This does a couple of things for us. Number one is it helps us to ensure that we have a laminate that's totally encapsulated with resin. And number two is it absolutely fills the best way possible any surface voids or porosity that you may have in your wet layup. The thinner your bag film is, the easier it is to get smoother surfaces, but any film thickness is okay once you kind of learn how to work it. There we go, satisfied with that. There you go. Okay, and that concludes everything that we do with vinyl esters or polyesters. On this one here, I applied a bag film, a light bag film to the top, and squeegeed it so that I could get a more resin-rich surface, which would allow you to sand more easily, give you a much cleaner surface to start with, and then come back and clear coat with the absolute minimal amount of risk for damaging the Innegra fiber. So let's start with that one first. We'll just kind of take this off and let you see the surface finish that we were able to achieve by applying the bag film to that. You can see that it's very smooth, and it's going to be much less problematic in terms of trying to fill pinholes and voids before you get ready to do your clear coat.